oh my gosh, my high school counselor decided that I was going to be in choir. And after a while, they were just like, we've already put you in there. You might as well go. And it is so funny to see where I am now, because I mean, that's my life. But yeah, so yeah.
We need more counselors like that. Yeah.
She is still very much prevalent in my life today.
Oh, great.
My high school choir director is like a second mother to me. And so I am so grateful to all of them for that. Yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah,
when did you begin your first composing?
You know what? I started out in high school. I would never show any of that to anybody. But some of my first influences were actually Stacey Gibbs, a name that people on this thread might know. Stacey Gibbs.
He's going to be with us on Wednesday. So.
Oh my gosh! Please give him my love. That's my big brother, and he was. I actually performed and premiered some of his first spiritual arrangements. Oh, wow. Nina Scott, who was my high school choir director at Renaissance High School in Detroit, was his teacher in Flint. And so at Renaissance, we premiered a lot of his pieces. And so I wanted to write just like Stacey. So I would come up and I'd write things down, and it didn't sound like much of anything, but my teacher, Nina, she said, just keep on, baby, keep on doing it. And so I was very grateful to her for that. I really started probably writing more seriously at Morehouse, which is a historically Black college in Atlanta, Georgia. So my teachers there, Dr. UC Brown, Dr. David Edward Morrow, who's of course been the conductor of the Glee Club for, my gosh, I feel like 30 years now. Yeah. And they were both students of Dr. Wendell Phillips Whalum, who was such a choral treasure. Robert Shaw referred to him as really the treasure to the spiritual. And so that's where I really started to write. And professionally, I was published first there through GIA. So thankful to Dr. James Abington, who has been a huge presence in my life since before I was born. And yeah, so it's continued there. That's where I started. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So what have you found most challenging during the pandemic that's going on right now for yourself?
Well, yeah, you know what? I think right now, everybody's, especially in the beginning, let's talk about the beginning, is how are we going to survive as creatives? That was probably the most frightening thing. I think what helped more so is that when so many of us, if so many of us are in the same situation together, then that means that there's a common goal that can be reached by the whole. And I think that was comforting to each other. I think that when everybody started to just come up with different ideas and ways to center themselves, one of the best things was to kind of step away from it. I was on a tour with the artist who I was working for, Lettucey, who's a Grammy-nominated recording artist, Lettucey, and also Gregory Porter, wonderful jazz vocalist. We were on a tour. All of that stopped, and in a way, it was kind of good to be able to just get away from the industry and get to the essence of why it is that we do what we do as creatives. And so we were unencumbered by the product, and we were strengthened by the process. Yeah.
Oh, that's well said. Well said. You've had quite a background in music theater, too, with Legally Blonde, Hairspray, Shrek.
Yeah, that started again with. Yeah, that started again with my father. He was a student at Interlochen. But also he did work. Yes, somebody said Shrek. I love it. It's a great musical. If you all are not aware of Shrek the musical, it is so much fun. But yeah, I would travel around with him a lot. He had a very dear friend at University of Michigan, and I credit them both with really inspiring me. I used to go and watch their rehearsals of The Wiz, Little Shop of Horrors, and so that was my thing. So when I got to Jersey, while I was working, teaching at Westminster, I had a very good friend and colleague of mine who invited me to become a music director for his theater company, where he worked with middle school and high school students. And so it was very interesting. My first show was, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, Legally Blonde.
Yeah.
And so I remember sitting there and having 3 piano books, piano one, piano, because you've got to have all of these things. And I was like, oh my gosh, how do you fit all of this together? And I'm also directing the singers in the front. And yeah, it's been such an important educational factor for me. I think it's very important that conductors should know how to conduct music theater.
Well,
I think they should know. Yeah.
Yeah, it leads me to my next question. How does conducting influence your own writing, your own arranging, and all of that?
Absolutely. I think that conductors are important for a number of things, but I guess the main thing is giving the roadmap. And so I, as a composer, want to make sure that I give the conductor a balance. I want to give them as much of my idea of the roadmap as possible, but I also want to create open space for them to interpret the roadmap in their way. Mm-hmm. You can get to Florida many ways. I can get to Tallahassee many ways. It just depends on what is most feasible and what makes best sense to you. So I have an idea, but I certainly don't want to encumber the conductor by saying this has just got to be it. You'll see in a lot of my more recent scores, I do not put any dynamic markings or anything like that in there. And so GIA used to look at me like, what are you doing? But I have had so many different and exciting interpretations of my music from all over, to my friend Juan Carlos da Costa in California, or Jason Max Ferdinand with the Oakwood Aeolians, or oh my gosh, all over. Gary Graydon, who's been doing so many wonderful things. So it's great to be able to give the roadmap and then to say, have fun. Yeah, absolutely.
We're getting a little interruption now because we're actually having an appliance put in the kitchen, which happened to coincide with your interview. Right?
No.
So if you hear some noise, everybody, just know that's what it is. Can you talk about how your own music intersects with the Black Lives Matter movement and
absolutely.
what's going on right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, for better or worse, history often repeats itself. And when we look at the history of the Negro spiritual in general, it has been used as not only a means of comfort, not only a means of emotional and mental support for the people, it has also been a means of protest. So if I look at the very traditional purpose of the spiritual, in a lot of ways, it was used as a form of escape. This was a way of message, not only amongst the people, but other places. This is our route to freedom. If I go past the Reconstruction era and I go into the Civil Rights movement, we're starting to utilize the spiritual as the protest song. Yeah. So things like "Guide My Feet" are now used in a different context, and it's still the same today. And I make it my mission to explain to everyone that the Negro spiritual is the definitive American music. And it is from the spiritual that everything from jazz, blues, gospel, rock and roll, some forms of country music. If you all haven't seen the country music documentary by Ken Burns, it is amazing how many of the major progenitors of country music were influenced by blues and spirituals. And we can go all the way to some forms of music theater. Hamilton, rap and hip hop. It's on Disney Plus. Everybody's all over it now. The rap and hip hop, these forms still come from the spiritual. They still come from definitive African rhythms. And so, all of this matters. All of this matters. And it has continued to be the consistent artistic form for centuries. So yeah, so that's how.
Yeah, I was even thinking about how it influenced Gershwin. Even.
Ooh, think about Porgy and Bess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, Gershwin, who traveled down to South Carolina, and he would go visit some of what they called the Geechee churches. Yes, summertime. Some of the Geechee churches, and he would sit down and he would literally just transcribe everything that he was listening to.
Yeah.
He also had an amazing conductor, a black woman conductor. Oh my God, Eva Jesse, the Eva Jesse Choir. They were the first choir to work with Gershwin, and Eva Jesse was the one that would tell Gershwin, "You need to rewrite that because that don't sound nothing like black church." And he said, "What?" He said, "Miss Jesse, tell me what you mean." And she would have the singer sing, and he'd just start to write. He'd just start to write, and so you just witness so many different forms. We can go all the way back to the evolution of the concert spiritual, where you have Dvorak, who comes and he says, "Oh my God, Harry Thacker Burley, this is the music that you all needed to be listening to. You all keep going to these other forms." He said, "It's been right here the whole time." Absolutely great.
Let's turn that question around. You've had a lot of classical training too. How
Mm-hmm.
has the classical training influenced your own writing?
Absolutely. When we think about, and I'm a history nerd, so y'all have to forgive me. Um, when I think about the evolution of the concert spiritual, I look back to the Fisk Jubilee singers, and historically during the Reconstruction era. Of course, for those who may not be as aware, Reconstruction era is right after the Civil War, right after the end of slavery. We have Fisk University, which is a historically black university. And what happens is the Fisk University is in dire financial strait. And the choir has to go on a tour to be able to fund the university, finance the university. And so there is actually a white conductor who's over the Jubilee singers at this time. And he hears his singers singing the songs of their ancestors, their parents and their grandparents, and they're singing the traditional spiritual in the raw element. Well, he said, "This is what we've got to use on the tour." He felt that it would be best to inundate the traditional spiritual with the Western European classical elements. And that is how we get the spiritual arrangement. So everybody knows this, Ride in the Chariot is a spiritual arrangement. You will rarely hear on the concert stage a raw spiritual. Most of these have been arranged. And so myself, Stacy Gibbs, Dr. Marcus Garrett, Dr. Brittany Boykin, Rosephanie Dunn Powell, Dr. Andre Thomas, we are arrangers of the traditional Negro spiritual. But yeah, that's how I use a lot of different influences, but definitely there's a heavy sense of Andre Thomas, yeah, my teacher. So definitely there are a lot of elements of Western European classical elements, I guess, to put formal structure to the spiritual. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but what I love about you mentioned about this intersection, there's so few of you that stay with the authenticity, you know, that you're honest to the form, to the nth degree. I mean, like, I love this in that third measure of the arrangement. That little spot in the introduction is just fabulous, you know. And there's lots of like that are just
so great. I use so many different elements. I am a fan of so many different genres, and you will hear in the piece, you hear the Andrews Sisters. You hear some Tin Pan Alley. You hear a bit of da 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 in the piano part, because I listen to a lot of stride. I listen to a lot of stride pianos. Some of the old stride masters, you'll see how far stretched out. My apologies to the accompanist, but
you've got big hands.
I've got big hands. But I use musical theater elements just as much as I use, the melody is crucial. And I think that is important for songwriting in general. It doesn't matter if you're doing arranging a spiritual, if you're writing in pop or R&B, the melody is crucial, and it's got to be there all the time. Same thing in jazz. So I'm a big fan of jazz. I'm a big fan of soul, neo soul, R&B. I use it all because it's all American music. Yeah.
So let's talk, because all of these students are working to be a part of the All-State experience. And so they
Yeah.
want to really give an authentic experience to this. And they're going to be working in sectionals very shortly on your piece. So
Great.
tell them a couple things that you think are mostly done incorrectly that they should be concerned with.
Okay. One of the big things that a lot of people get tripped up about is dialect. And so sometimes we're confused as to whether we should be so intent about like D's and does and things of that nature.
Right.
I'm not. I don't really get too heavy into that. I feel that a lot of the text should be more dentalized rather than implosive. So if I say, "Oh Lord, have mercy on me," so my vowels are rounded, and they're not as oh Lord. So I think of like Lowry salt, Lowry, like it just makes sure it tastes good in your mouth. Oh Lord, have mercy on me, and I hope I'll join the band. Okay, so oh, another thing, when you get ladies, especially or sopranos and altos, when you get to the chatter section, gonna chatter with the angels. Make sure that that's first of all, that's Andrew's sister. So if anybody's not aware of them, go YouTube them immediately so you can get exactly what that means. Mind you, in this section, the melody is imperative. So the tenors and basses have that. Ladies, you all are sopranos and altos. You are like, the angels, just literally chattering about. And so you all need to have chatter, chatter, chatter. So it needs to be more like a D in the middle instead of don't do chatter, 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 law. Okay. So yeah, the other thing is spirituals are not swung. And so the emphasis, the rhythmic emphasis is more so on the 1 and the 3 rather than the 2 and the 4. So let me explain that. There is something that Dr. Wendell Whalum referred to as the lilt that is apparent in almost all of African American traditional music. And that means when I think about historically working, if those who formed the spirituals, those who originally wrote the spirituals were slaves. They were working in the fields. And if I'm thinking about holding any type of instrument, ride up in the chariot soon in the 1. So 1 and 3. So the emphasis goes there. So it is not ride up in the chariot soon. It goes on the 1 and the 3. And so your emphasis needs to be there. And the amazing thing about it is that the text is already there for you to emphasize, just like that. Ride up in the chariot soon, and I hope I'll join the band. It's right there. It's exactly right there. I would say that those are probably the most imperative things. The dialect, keeping that tone rounded. It's got, but it still should have a bit more excitement. Keep everything in that mask, as my teacher used to tell me about, that mixture of chiaro and the scuro, the light and the dark. But always keeping very tall embouchure. Yeah, that's it.
Fantastic. We got about 3 minutes. I'd love for you to tell us what's coming up in your world and the projects that are coming forward.
Yeah, so much. So just as of recent, maybe as of last month, I accepted a position as Director of Choral Activities at Wayne State University here in Detroit, Michigan. So we start in the fall, so it's going to be very interesting. You already know, we're just trying to figure out how do you do this thing. But thank you so much, but we're figuring it out together, so we'll be fine. I'm so grateful to ACDA. At the next national convention, I, along with Stacy Gibbs, Rosephine Powell, and Dr. Marcus Garrett will be doing a panel discussion. And Yuzi Brown, Dr. Yuzi Brown, who will be our moderator, will be doing a panel discussion on the relevance of the modern spiritual, concert spiritual arrangement in the 21st century. So we're looking forward to that. Also, maybe about a year and a half ago, ACDA and their Diverse Voices group granted me to be the inaugural recipient for their Diverse Voices composition grant. And so what I'll be doing, my project is working on a double choir piece that will split the choirs. And what we'll be doing is one choir will be singing the text of James Baldwin, and the other choir will be singing the text of the Negro Spirituals. And they will be accompanied by a jazz trio.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, so this is a big project where I've had in mind for a while. And so I'm excited to get to that, and hopefully, you know, we'll be able to hear it at ACDA soon. But those are some of the major things that are coming up.
That's amazing, Brandon. What James Baldwin are you going to use, or don't you know yet?
Oh my gosh, I have no clue yet. But I'm going to use as much as I can. For those that are not aware of James Baldwin, he one of the literary greats, particularly in the Harlem Renaissance. But he was also a dear friend to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., as well as Malcolm X, and so many of the civil rights leaders of the day. He himself was a great civil rights leader, so I encourage you to read books of his like Go Tell It on the Mountain, The Fire Next Time, and also just some of his regular writings.
Yeah, I'm reading The Fire Next Time right now. I just love it.
Oh my gosh, he's major, and also was a major proponent in the early times of LGBTQ rights.
Yeah.
Major. There's a documentary out on him, if you are not aware, called I Am Not Your Negro.
Ah, okay.
Go watch it. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely.
So for our budding young composers out there, I bet you we have 20 or 30 that are online right now saying, I've got something to say. What would you suggest the 2 or 3 steps that they say, I'm 16 right now, I'm 17, and I'm thinking about really going after this? What would you tell them to do?
Listen to everything. Listen to everything that you can. I grew up in the car with my Gma listening to from Judy Garland to Barbra Streisand to R&B to Gershwin to Tchaikovsky and Brahms. Everything that you can get your hands on, please listen to it, because it informs your writing. Be yourself. Please be yourself in your writing. We have an Eric Whitacre already. We had a Moses Hogan already. We have we have all of them. We've got a Brandon Waddles already. I'm still figuring out how to be me. Let me tell you what Miles Davis said. And Miles Davis is one of my favorite just musicians in general. I don't categorize him just as jazz, because he hated that term. He said it takes an MF for so long to learn how to play like themselves.
Well said.
And Miles knew. Now Miles was a character, but he knew it takes so long for you to realize because after you've listened to all of that, you know, sometimes you can be so heavily inundated by those sounds that you feel like you have to mimic. No, yeah. Just bells, just a little bit of icing. That's all icing, but you're the foundation. You are your own foundation. Absolutely.
Brandon, you have inspired us today. I can't tell you beyond belief. So I think we're all very anxious to both thank you for your time that you give so graciously this afternoon. And we look forward to really doing honor to your piece and the sectionals, and
thank you.
moving this forward. So thanks again for writing such a fabulous arrangement too.
Thank you so much. And I see all of these questions from the students. So what I'm going to do for you guys, if you have questions, I'm going to send you all to my website, and there's a way that you all can get in contact with me if you have any questions, because I want to be here for the students. I want to make sure that and I'm still on the journey myself, but I wanted people who were there, you know, a little bit further on the journey to help me on my way. So if you have any questions, go to my website. I'm about to put it in here.
We've got people from
that'll
all
be great.
over Texas. So we got people from Houston.
Oh my gosh.
Lubbock and obviously San Antonio and Dallas and all over the place. So you're going to be
love it.
You're going to be in Dallas for the National Convention doing that seminar, right?
We'll be in Dallas for that seminar. Your conductor for the mixed choir will be Dr. Amanda Quist, who was a mentor and then turned colleague of mine. She's a dear friend. She's amazing. I believe
with us on Friday. So.
Oh, great. So I believe that I'm going to be there with you all for Allstate. And I might actually be at the keys. So, so I have to practice. But anywho, so yeah, so we're looking forward to it. And thank you, you all. Please just be grateful for your educators. Be grateful for your educators. They continue to be my life source, even to this day. So thank you all
for the inspiration, Brandon. Really.
Absolutely, my pleasure. All right, you all take care.